Welcome back to the Christian I Ching. This lecture is on the reading, and I'm Roger Sessions. The goal of this unit is to give you an example of interpreting an I Ching reading. The reading that I'm going to interpret is the question that I was asking about whether I should do this online course or not. So here's my workbook. I've written down the question, how am I being called to move forward with an online I Ching workshop for Christians? I've gone through my protocol, my stone protocol. So I've received the 6 lines and I've written them down here. You can see the bottom one was a 9, line 2 is a 6, and then a 9, 7, 8, 9. My top line, the 6th line was a 9. And now let's go through the process of creating the hexagrams, looking up the archetypes, and interpreting the response. The first thing I need to do is to translate the numbers into line types, and we just do that the way we've already discussed. Any line that's an odd number becomes a solid line, and I think that the easiest thing to do is to forget about the moving lines to start with and just write down which lines are solid and which ones are open. So any place where you have an odd number, put a solid line. Those 2 dots over there are basically just guides to show you, where the line should start and where it should end. I've seen some very sloppy hexagrams, so I've decided that adding some guides into the workbook might not be a bad idea. So any place where you have an odd number, put in a solid line. Any place where you have an even number of course is 6 or 8, put in an open line. And once you've done that, I'll give you a moment to do that. Once you've done that, then make a note on which ones of those lines are moving. So any of the extreme numbers, so anything that's either a 6 or a 9, put a little X in the circle there. Anything that's not a 6 or a 9, just leave it alone. We don't mark the static lines, we just mark the moving lines. Once we have the moving lines in there, now we can construct the resulting archetype. And of course, the way we do that is we just copy it line by line over from the starting hexagram to the resulting hexagram, except that where there's a moving line, we transfer it into its opposite. So the reading that I was doing, I had moving lines in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 6th position. So those lines get reversed, and the other lines, the 5 and the 6th lines, which are static, don't get reversed. Of course, in my case, I had a lot of moving lines. It's kind of unusual. Usually 2 or 3 lines are moving and the rest are static. Once you've constructed, and feel free to pause the video if I'm getting ahead of you. Once you've constructed the resulting hexagram, then you're going to look it up, as I described earlier, both of the hexagrams in the index table. So you're just going to look for that intersection. I described that in the previous lecture. And the first one is they intersect at number 30, so I write down a 30 on my workbook and that starting number. I do the same with the resulting one. I look that up and I find that they intersect at number 40. So I write down a 40 as my resulting number. Now I can actually look up the archetypes if I'd like. I can do that now, or I can wait until I've actually found them in the book. So I like to write down the name of the archetype pretty quickly. So I look it up in the table of contents and I see that number 30 is the light, and the resulting archetype, which is number 40, is deliverance. Now we can take a look in the Christian I Ching. We actually want to look and see what these archetypes are telling us. The starting archetype, number 30, is starting on page 166. So get out your Christian I Ching and you can follow along with me starting at page 166. We notice it's archetype 30, the light. We see that it matches what we discovered when we looked it up in the index and the table of contents. Now the first thing you always want to do is you always want to compare the pictogram that you have in your workbook to the pictogram that's actually shown in the Christian I Ching under this archetype. Now you might think that that's kind of silly. They're certainly going to match, right? Well, they will match if you haven't made any mistakes in using your index table. But it's very easy to make a mistake using that index table. It's very easy to get off by a row or by a column. So, it's easy to think that you got a 30 when you really got something else. the way you make sure that you've done it correctly is you compare the picture that you have in your workbook to the picture shown in the book, and they should match line by line. If they match line by line, then you know you found the right archetype. So just do that double check. Believe me, it's going to save you some aggravation later on. Well, now you can start looking at the archetype. So right away, you know something about the archetype. You know its number and its name. And you can see, is there anything there that seems to be relevant? Well, the light seems somewhat relevant to me because I'm asking about should I create this I Ching workshop. So just the fact that we're starting with the light would seem to indicate that there's something about this workshop that is analogous to light. When we look at the scripture reading, this is the scripture reading that I received, and what I've done is underlined words here that kind of jump out at me as being pregnant with meaning, given the question that I was asking. So the full reading is John 1:9 through 13, and some of the things that I've kind of highlighted there are true light, enlightened, coming into the world did not know him, his own people did not accept him, but he gave power to become children of God. So you want to look at these phrases and see which ones contain the main energy in the reading, and how do they relate to the query that you posed. What feelings does this reading invoke in you? And where is the querent, the person who's asking the question in the reading? Where are they in the reading? Because sometimes they're not the obvious main character. Sometimes they may be one of the minor characters in here. What else can you see in the reading? So just sit with the reading, the scripture reading for a while and see what that's telling you. So in my case, I'm asking about doing this I Ching workshop. And this seems to be very encouraging because it seems to be talking about a light which is enlightening people coming into the world. There's a little bit of warning here about that his own people will not accept him, which, believe me, I can tell you from talking to many fundamentalist Christians that they're not going to accept anything that I'm talking about here. But for those who are willing to receive it, it's going to give power to become children of God. So that's a very positive affirmation to me about what I'm trying to do here. Then you can see the discussion of the reading, and again, how does that clarify the meaning of the scripture? So in this particular case, it says, Jesus is the Christ is sent to bring us light. So I underline bring us light because I'm seeing that again. Bring us out of darkness, a light so bright that no evil can long stand against it. Again, so that seems very positive. It seems to me, again, we're talking about the I Ching workshop is something that can bring light. It can bring us out of darkness. Darkness, in this case, to me means analogous to ignorance or not understanding how to do this. And there's even a refrain there from the warning that I got earlier that people might not accept it. This is kind of telling me it doesn't really matter because the light is so bright that people who are opposed to it aren't going to hold out against it for very long. So all of that seems very, very positive to me. Then you can read the description of the hexagram itself. Usually you're not going to find a lot in here, but it's always worth checking it. In this particular case, I see there's a discussion in here about the two trigrams. Remember, the hexagram can be considered these two trigrams. And this is a doubling of the Christ trigram. A doubling means that it's the same trigram above as it is below, which is true for 8 of the 64 trigrams, but most of them are not doubled. So here again we see something about being receptive. We are empty so we can be filled, receive Christ's light. I'm not getting a lot of new insight, but I'm certainly getting some positive affirmations from along the lines of what I had before. And now we read the archetype itself. There is a time to offer oneself totally to the light. This is really kind of addressing the concern I had. Should I even be doing this workshop? It's saying now's the time to offer yourself totally to this so that the light can continue burning, to cling to what is right. So what is right in this case? Well, given everything else I'm reading, I'd say what is right is to do the workshop. So I continue reading along this and just kind of seeing what am I feeling about all of this? What is this telling me? In my case, I feel like I'm getting a very positive affirmation. I'm being called to do this workshop. Now we can look at the moving lines. The moving lines are going to bring me to the specific sections of the line area, which I'm called to read. So I'm called to read the moving lines in the first, second, third, and sixth position. I'm not going to go through all these. You can kind of read them, and really it's not so important what my reading is as it is how you can use this understanding to do your own reading. But whatever lines you have, you're going to read those sections, go through a similar process, note what kind of jumps out at you, what is this telling you, where's your part in this, what wisdom are you gaining from hearing this. So you may have one line, you may have two lines, you may have four like mine, you may have no lines, you may have 6 lines. Any of those are possible. Of course, you can't have more than 6 moving lines because that's the number of lines that we have in the hexagram. The third line was kind of poignant for me because one of the things I keep thinking about is, I'm getting ready to retire and I don't have that much time left to do work, so can I really dedicate time to this? And, line 3 was directly addressing that concern, telling me it's not how long I live that matters, but how I use the time I have, telling me that, this is an important project and I should do it. Moving up to the fourth line is kind of telling me to eliminate bad habits, and believe me, I have plenty. So I need to have some discipline, tolerate those that are harmless. One of my bad habits is procrastinating on doing this material, especially the recordings, which is pretty difficult. So I've had to deal with those bad habits in getting this course ready for you. And then finally, we're ready to move to the resulting archetype, which is number 40 in my case. So we kind of go through a similar process. We start out looking at the archetype. The first thing we always do is check the pictograms to make sure we're in the right place. Look for the numbers of the archetype name. In this case, the 40 is kind of interesting because 40 is a number that is often used to refer to deliverance in the Bible. It's the number of days that that the rain was coming down. Now it's the number of days Jesus spent in the desert. So it's a number that is often associated with deliverance. The scripture reading, which I'm not going to go through here, but in my case, it's the scripture reading I'm led to, which is one associated with number 40, is talking about leaving the ark. And again, this is the resulting archetype. This is where I'm likely to end up if I follow along with the energy flows in the starting archetype. And I'm being told about something that's coming out of darkness and that bringing a new life to the world. So again, this seems to be, the way I interpret this, is if I go ahead and do the online workshop and I follow the moving lines, that I'm going to be bringing something forth that's going to be very beautiful and important and bring new life into the world. It's a beautiful idea. I certainly hope it's true. I'll go through a similar approach with the reading discussion, see what that says to me, and read about the hexagrams. I won't go through all this now, but you would go through all these, look for meaning, look for what you're being told here. The archetype as well, so this is where I'm going to end up. I'm going to start appreciate the potential of all that is now possible, relax on guard, transition back to normalcy. I think that's telling me I need to get back to the work that I kind of put aside to do this course. So there's a lot of that I need to get back to and get back to normalcy as quickly as possible. Even a couple of warnings about my ego. So it's saying, don't let your triumph feed your ego. Clean up that which has been allowed to stagnate. Again, that's referring back to the work that I've let go to do this project. To let go of mistakes and errors of judgment, focus on a new beginning. That's really important because I keep thinking, well, I should have explained this a little bit differently or that a little bit differently. Hopefully I can let go of all that, and hopefully what I've done for you is good enough to really give you an understanding how to use this wonderful, wonderful tool. One point I should make about the moving lines is that you only read the moving lines section in the starting archetype. You don't read the moving lines in the resulting archetype. So I had lines moving in the first, second, third, and sixth position. I read about those in the starting archetype, which was number 30, but not in the resulting archetype, which was number 40. So I hope this gives you an idea how to interpret a reading. Each one is going to be different, each one is going to be unique, but I think you're going to find that each one of them is filled with wisdom that will help you make good decisions on the struggles that you're facing in your own life. I'm Roger Sessions. Thank you for joining me. In the next unit, we're going to just do a review of everything that we've covered, and then you're going to be well on your way to using the Christian I Ching as your own tool of discernment, as a tool for receiving God's wisdom to help you guide your life as it has guided mine. Thank you so much for being part of this.